On the morning of January 17, 2008, broke cold and grey over London. At Heathrow, one of the world's busiest airports, the rhythm of the day was beginning to build, a symphony of rumbling engines, humming ground equipment, and the distant chatter of thousands of travelers. Unbeknownst to all, a drama was about to unfold in the sky above that would test human skill to its absolute limit and change aviation safety forever. This is the story of British Airways crashed Flight BA38. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe now. Red.aviation. Meanwhile, high above the Arctic, British Airways Flight 38 was making its final approach into this routine. The Boeing 777-200, a twin-engine wide-body jet registered as GYMMM, was completing a long-haul journey from Beijing. On board were the passengers and crew, totaling 152 people according to several sources, though one report mentioned 136 passengers and 16 crew members. They had spent nearly 11 hours in the air, crossing the vast, frozen expanse of Siberia, where outside temperatures had plummeted to a bone-chilling -65 degrees Celsius to -74 degrees Celsius, -85 degrees Fahrenheit to -101 degrees Fahrenheit. In the cockpit, the atmosphere was one of professional calm. The crew was experienced, and the aircraft, just 6 years old, was considered one of the most reliable in the sky. Having operated without a fatal accident since its introduction in 1995, the pilots began their descent, following the standard procedures that had brought them safely to countless runways before. The plane was lined up with Heathrow's runway 27L, its landing gear down, its flaps set.
Runway in sight.
They were just 122 meters, 400 feet above the ground, a mere 20 seconds from a normal touchdown. Then, without warning, the routine shattered in the cockpit. The steady roar of the two powerful Rolls-Royce Trent 800 engines faded into an eerie silence. Both engines simultaneously lost all thrust. The cockpit displays, which moments before had shown a healthy flow of data, flickered. The aircraft's main electrical systems, powered by the engines, went dead. The massive jet, suddenly transformed from a marvel of engineering into a 200-ton glider, began to lose altitude rapidly. The smooth descent became a sickening drop, with the rate of descent increasing to over 500 feet per minute. Inside the cabin, the sudden quiet was more terrifying than any noise. The comforting hum that passengers unconsciously relied upon was gone, replaced by the whistle of wind outside. The plane was still moving forward, but it was sinking. Through the windows, the houses and cars of suburban London looked terrifyingly close, rising up to meet them. One report indicated the plane skimmed as low as 6 meters, 20 feet, over homes and roads near the airport. In the cockpit, there was no time for panic. The pilot's training took over. The captain, later identified as Peter Burkle, and his senior first officer, John Coward, immediately began to troubleshoot. They pushed the throttles forward, demanding power, but the engines gave no response. The aircraft systems provided no warning or alarm to explain the dual failure. They were flying a dead stick, with the runway stretching out before them but agonizingly out of reach. The pilots had one last critical decision to make. They could not make the paved surface. Their only option was a forced landing on the grassy, uneven terrain short of the runway threshold. The first officer, at the controls, fought to maintain what little airspeed remained and to keep the aircraft's nose up, performing a flare maneuver just before impact to slow the descent as much as possible. At 12:42 p.m., the silent jet met the earth. The initial impact was on the grassy area about 300 meters, 1,000 feet, short of runway 27L. It was violent. but the pilots had managed to ensure the aircraft was mostly level. The left main landing gear collapsed first, its strut piercing through the wing root. The right main landing gear was sheared off entirely, catapulting away from the fuselage. The two powerless Rolls-Royce engines were crushed and dragged along the ground as the plane skidded across the grass, carving deep gouges into the turf. The crippled 777 slid forward, its momentum carrying it onto the paved runway threshold before it finally ground to a halt at the very start of the tarmac. For a moment, there was silence more shocking than the crash itself. Then the urgency of survival took over. Despite the severe structural damage, the fuselage had remained largely intact, and there was no immediate fire. The cabin crew, executing their emergency training flawlessly, immediately initiated an evacuation. Passengers, some dazed and injured, others remarkably calm, moved towards the emergency exits. The escape slides deployed, and people slid down to the safety of the ground. The human cost of the crash was miraculously low. All 152 people on board survived. However, the event was not without injury. Reports on the number of injured vary, with sources citing 47 injuries, 1 serious, 18 minor injuries, or a single serious injury among others. The wrecked aircraft, however, was not going to fly again. The damage was so extensive that the British Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, described it as beyond economic repair. British Airways decided to scrap the plane, making it the first Boeing 777 to be written off as a total loss. The immediate aftermath at Heathrow was chaos. The airport was forced to close a runway, leading to massive delays and the cancellation of 221 flights. The disruption even extended to the highest levels of government, delaying the departure of British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who was scheduled to fly to China that day. The most pressing question, of course, was why. How could both engines on a state-of-the-art aircraft fail simultaneously at the most critical phase of flight? The AIB launched a full-scale investigation. The initial examination of the fuel tanks provided a crucial clue. Investigators found about 5 liters of water present in the system. The mystery began to unravel. Flight 38 had flown through the intensely cold air over Siberia for hours. While jet fuel has a very low freezing point, the small amount of water that can be present in aviation fuel is a different matter. The investigation concluded that this water had separated and frozen into tiny ice crystals within the fuel tanks. As the aircraft descended into warmer air, these crystals were carried along with the fuel. They then melted and refroze in a different part of the system, specifically within the intricate narrow tubes of the fuel oil heat exchangers, FOHEs, on both engines. The FOHEs are components that use cold fuel to cool the engine's hot oil. On that day, a specific combination of high altitude, low fuel temperature, and the particular design of the Rolls-Royce Trent 800 FOHEs led to a catastrophic blockage. A soft, slushy ice, known as soft ice, restricted the flow of fuel just as the pilots were preparing to land, starving both engines of fuel at the same time. The legacy of BA Flight 38 is one of both caution and heroism. The pilots, Peter Burkle and John Coward, were hailed as heroes for their exceptional airmanship under unimaginable pressure, saving everyone on board. From an engineering standpoint, the crash led to immediate and significant safety changes. Boeing issued new operational guidelines, warning airlines not to fly the affected 777 model in temperatures below -10 degrees Celsius for more than 2 hours. Most importantly, Rolls-Royce redesigned the fuel oil heat exchangers for the Trent 800 engine to prevent ice from accumulating and blocking the fuel flow. This modification was applied across the fleet, ensuring that the hard lessons learned on that cold January day would make aviation safer for everyone. The story of BA-38 is not just a tale of a crash. It is a story of a mystery solved, lives saved, and a system improved in the face of failure. Thank you for watching this complete video. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel Red Dot Aviation.